Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will teach you 20 pairs of English words you need to stop confusing today, part 4. English is a very confusing language. Mixing up similar sounding words might not be an issue when you're speaking English, but when you're writing the words, the mistakes can be easily noticed. One letter or one space can make all the difference in this language. Your vocabulary will be better equipped if you understand the subtle differences in these pairs of similar sounding words. So without any further delay, let's look at the 20 pairs of English words you need to stop confusing today. Let's look at a first pair, oral and aural. Oral, meaning hearing relating to the mouth or spoken. Let's look at the example. He passed his French oral examination. Aural, meaning relating to the ears. Let's look at the example. People communicate by both visual and oral means. Let's look at a second pair, climatic and climactic. Climatic, meaning relating to climate. Let's look at the example. In the summer months, a different set of climatic factors come into play. Climactic, meaning forming a climax. Let's look at the example. Many audience members cry during the film's climactic scenes. Let's look at a third pair, censure and censor. Censure, meaning to criticize strongly. Let's look at the example. The soldier was sent home from boot camp after received another censure from the general. Censor, meaning to ban parts of a book or film or a person who does this work. Let's look at the example. 2 scenes were cut by the censor. Let's look at a fourth pair, complacent and complaisant. Complacent, meaning smug and self-satisfied. Let's look at the example. The student grew complacent about the challenges ahead. Complaisant, meaning willing to please. Let's look at the example. She is always helpful and complacent. Let's look at a fifth pair, Q and Q. Q, meaning a signal for action or a wooden rod. Let's look at the example. I'll take my cue from you. Queue, meaning a line of people or vehicles. Let's look at the example. There was a queue of traffic waiting to turn right. Let's look at a sixth pair, bring and take. Bring means to carry something from one place to another and movement is towards a place. Let's look at the example. Tell them to bring me a bottle. Take, meaning to carry something to another place. And in this, movement is away from the place. Let's look at the example. She had to take care of her sister. Let's look at a seventh pair, curb and curb. Curb, meaning to keep something in check or a control or limit. Let's look at the example. Natasha stood at the airport curb. Her suitcase was by her side. Curb, meaning the stone edge of a pavement, and this is UK English. Let's look at the example. The driver bumped the curb while reversing. Let's look at the eighth pair, currant and currant. Currant, meaning a dried grape. Let's look at the example. Since I love raisins, the taste of ripe currant in my dish was delicious. Current, meaning happening now or a flow of water, air or electricity. Example. The swimmer was swept away by the current. Tom is Mary's current boyfriend. Allude and allude. Allude, meaning to refer to something. Let's look at the example. I didn't allude to anybody or anything. Allude, meaning to dodge or escape. Let's look at the example. The killer was able to elude the police. Let's look at a 10th pair, continual and continuous. Continual, meaning something that happens frequently with breaks between the occurrences. Let's look at the example. This week we experienced days of continual sunshine. Continuous, meaning something that happens without stopping. Let's look at the example. The rain has been continuous since this morning. Let's look at a 11th pair, Forbear and Forebear. Forbear, meaning to refrain from. Let's look at the example. He could not forbear from expressing his disagreement. Forebear, meaning ancestor or forefather or a person from whom you are descended. Let's look at the example. I'll come back to the land of my forebears. Let's look at a 12th pair, Gibe and Gibe. Gibe, meaning to taunt. Let's look at the example. It's impolite to jibe at a foreign student's English. Jibe, meaning to agree, correspond or tally or to shift the sails in the voting term. Let's look at the example. Your statement doesn't jibe with the facts. Let's look at a 13th pair, incite and incite. Incite, meaning to stir up or to encourage, and this is a verb. Let's look at the example. They incited him to commit the crime. Incite, meaning intuition, awareness or understanding, and this is a noun. Let's look at the example. The author analyzes the problem with remarkable insight. Let's look at a 14th pair, lie and lay. Lie, meaning to assume or be suited in a horizontal position, and this is in present tense. Let's look at the example. I asked my father to lie down as he looked exhausted. Lay, meaning, and this is the past tense of above form of lie. Let's look at the example. My mother lay down when I asked her to. And the second meaning of lay is to place something. Let's look at the example. The hen lays eggs. Let's look at a 15th pair, stair and stare. Stare, meaning, stare means to look for a long time with the eyes wide open, especially when surprised, frightened or thinking. Let's look at the example. Don't stare at people unnecessarily. Stair, meaning the stair is a set of steps leading from one floor of a building to another and typically inside the building. Let's look at the example. She walked around the ground level looking for the stairs that led to the second floor. Let's look at a 16th pair, liable and libel. Liable, meaning subject to or answerable for or likely. Let's look at the example. You will be liable for any damage caused. Libel, meaning written untruths about someone for which you may be taken to court. Let's look at the example. He sued the newspaper for libel. Let's look at a 17th pair, lay and laid. Lay, meaning to put or place, and this is in present tense. Let's look at the example. I don't like to lay my purse on the floor. Lay. And this is the past tense of above form of lay. Let's look at the example. She laid her head on his shoulder. Let's look at a 18th pair, Marshal and Marshal. Marshal, meaning a military officer or a sheriff. Let's look at the example. The oldest general was appointed Marshal of the armies. Marshal, meaning to muster, usher, guide, align, array or to organize. Let's look at the example. Marshal was doomed to run the family companies. Let's look at a 19th pair, overdue and overdue. Overdue, meaning to do something to an excessive degree. Let's look at the example. You should exercise every day but don't overdo it. Overdue, meaning past due, not paid within the scheduled time. Let's look at the example. She reminded him that the rent was overdue. Let's look at a last pair, mute and moot. Mute, meaning silent or refraining from speech or utterance. Let's look at the example. He covered 1 year to mute the passing traffic. Moot, meaning debatable. Let's look at the example. Since the judge has decided the child will live with her mother, the custody argument between the parents is moot. So friends, I hope you enjoyed this English lesson series and learned a lot. So you can continue studying with me by subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to get the notification for my upcoming videos. Thank you for watching.